Hello, this is Jonathan Ray with Aible. We're going to be taking you through our Aible Advanced webinar, and I have Orjit Sengupta here with me to set it up, and then we'll go ahead and take you through a demo.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to present Aible Advanced to you for the first time. What is Aible Advanced all about? Essentially, we are looking at the end-to-end process to get business value from AI. And that actually has several different steps. Core to it is the first step, which is about requirement gathering, where you want to understand exactly what the business is trying to optimize. What are the cost benefit trade offs from predictions? What are their business constraints? Essentially, you're trying to understand how do we maximize the business impact. Now, if there's one thing you know about Able, that's probably this aspect of it, that we are AI for real world and that we optimize for business impact, not just accuracy. If there is a second thing you probably know about us, it's that we have a security system whereby we don't access your data, we don't see your model. Essentially, the entirety of the model training is done in your environment, so we don't see any of the information. But let's go back to this fundamental differentiator for Able, the requirement gathering step. Why does this matter? Well, let's take a simple example. Imagine the benefit of a sale is 125 times greater than the cost of a failed pursuit. So if I pursue a customer and they buy, I get say $125. But if I pursue a customer and they don't buy, it costs me $1. And imagine I have a 10% win rate. By the way, these are based on real case studies. We have just anonymized the heck out of them. But what would an AI tell you to do given this information? Well, it turns out if you're optimizing for accuracy, which is what most models do today, the AI that is extremely accurate will be a very conservative one. Because you have such a low win rate, it is actually likely to have a higher accuracy if it rarely tells you to pursue a customer. So in this case, this is one that tells you to pursue 1161 customers. That's the process number. That's the number of customers it's telling you to pursue. And of these, it gets 720 correct. That's a fantastic number. In fact, that translates to a 95.9% accuracy rating and a log loss of 0.2. But notice that it misses 800 potential deals, and thus it only has a business benefit of 3.5 million. Now, if you actually optimize for business impact, you end up with a very different strategy. Just think of it from a human perspective. If I told you that the benefit of a deal is 125 times the cost of unnecessary pursuing one, any entrepreneur would tell you, hey, try for 124 deals. As long as you get the last deal, you're good. Try hard, right? That's what an entrepreneur would tell you. And the Able optimized model, the impact optimized model is doing the same thing. It is basically saying, look, the value of getting a deal is so high, I'm going to try very, very hard. So it's trying to go after almost 6,000 prospects. And guess what? It's only right 1/4 of the time. So it actually has a really bad accuracy rating, 85% accuracy. It has a log loss of 2.4, which is 12 times higher than the log loss of the accuracy optimized model. If you go by traditional data science approaches, you're always going to say that the accuracy optimized model is better. But notice that the impact optimized model actually is giving you $42 million of benefit compared to 3.5 million. So it's about 12 times better in terms of impact, even though the other model is 12 times better in terms of log loss. And this is why it is so important to start with the business requirements first. Think of it this way. Essentially, if you're doing auto ML without actually understanding the customer's unique needs, you're saying, I'm just going to throw 10,000 darts at the wall and hopefully it will hit the target wherever it's on the wall. And then I eventually bring the business users in and I say, hey, figure out whether I hit your target. What Aible is doing is asking the business users the questions up front so it can figure out where the target is, optimize the dart throwing towards hitting the target, and thus we end up hitting a target that actually delivers on business impact because that's what we are searching for, unlike traditional auto ML. Now, that's one part of the whole story. And of course, let's talk about the end-to-end process to delivering business impact. The next part of the story is the use case blueprints. You're going to see Jonathan show this to you, but essentially, quite often when business users trying to do auto ML, the question becomes, well, what data should I have? And Should I have a variable like revenue per square foot, which is very important for certain use cases? Well, blueprints give you that best practices codified in a way that anybody can use. But then the question is, where do I get the data from? Is the data in Salesforce? Is the data in Microsoft Dynamics? Is it in HubSpot, for example? Well, data recipes help you get the data from the enterprise systems where they reside. And we are partnering with a company called Trade.io right now, through which we have about 400 adapters for data connectors that we can use. Next question after that is data enhancement. That can be as simple as data cleansing, dealing with missing values. It can be figuring out derived variables, like which variables interact together, and thus we should consider them as a combination to make a better model. It might be normalizing numbers for neural nets. Whatever the form of data enhancement, doing that in a scalable way, doing it through code, not by changing the data. Why through code? Because then at deployment, everything we did in data enhancement can be deployed in a consistent way. Remember, in this situation, you're trying to get business impact, which means you start with what you can deliver and make sure everything is consistent with that. What's the use of doing great things that give you a fantastic model from an academic setting if you can't actually deploy it and get business impact out of it? Next comes model customization. By the way, this is unique to Aible. What we are doing is we are using the requirement gathering phase to figure out how should we optimize your model to search for business impact. So when you take a model like TensorFlow, essentially the models tend to search for academic things like precision, recall, log loss, whatever you want. What you want to do is you want to override the part of that model. It's still the same off-the-shelf TensorFlow, scikit-learn, H2.ai, whatever you want to do, XGBoost. You have a model that is actually going to go in and search for something. We just want to change it so it's searching for business impact as uniquely defined by you for this use case. Then we do hyperparameter tuning, which is what everybody, of course, does in AutoML. But the difference is when you're doing hyperparameter tuning in normal AutoML, you're trying to search for more accurate models. And in our case, because we did the model customization, we are searching for the most impactful model. Oh, and by the way, because we are using serverless technologies like AWS Lambda for smaller data sets, we can do it in a massively parallelized way, which is far more efficient in cost and time, obviously. Then you get to model selection, where Aible, of course, recommends the model that delivers the best business impact. And you can also do manual things like doing what-if analysis, scenario testing, and of course, Aible does sensitivity analysis for you as well, so that you're finding the model that delivers the best impact, considering cost-benefit trade-offs, prediction, and resourcing. So it's giving you a global optima that actually delivers business impact because it considers all three questions, whereas all of our competitors only look at prediction, not the cost benefit trade-off, essentially the optimization, and not the resourcing. Next, after that, you deploy the model. Again, we deploy it in serverless form, so you can have many, many models at a very low cost, and many models become important. You'll see later that you might want to have custom models for different use cases very, very easily. But if the model doesn't write back to your enterprise systems, does it matter? We don't believe that's the case. We believe it is really important to close the loop. Just like we took the data straight from the enterprise systems, it is important to write back the predictions to your enterprise systems so you get it right where you work. And that also allows us to do a very different form of monitoring, where we are not looking at academic metrics. We are literally looking at what did we predict, what did actually happen in the enterprise system. Let's look at the reality that we observe and compare it to our prediction and continuously learn from this so that we can improve it further. Now, that's the end-to-end 10-step for true AutoML, real-world AutoML. What is our competitors doing? If you look at our competitors, they actually don't do the requirement gathering. They do it through consulting. They don't really do the use case blueprints. That's again through consulting. Then you end up with the data recipes where some of them have adapters for data sources, many don't. Then data enhancement where there's some features. But notice what happened here. The first few steps here is consulting, which is a high expense, high resource, low scalability way of coming at it. The first two steps that they actually do are all about the data. If you have heard the oft reported fact that most AI models are not getting deployed. That you have to do, there are companies out there bragging about how they have done more than 1 billion models, but they won't tell you how many models they've actually deployed. Why is that? Because these friction points actually increase the cost of doing an auto ML very high because you're using very expensive, low scale consulting upfront. The second thing that it does is because the first steps here is all about data and most models are not getting deployed, guess what happens? You keep seeing that most of your resources went into these two steps, but because you never got to those last steps in most of the real customer situations. Of course, our competitors do hyperparameter tuning, but they're tuning for accuracy. And as we showed you, accuracy can mislead you. It can cause you to have 12 times worse value while it's giving you 12 times higher accuracy in a log loss basis. They do some model selection capabilities. Typically, they would not consider the resourcing and the optimization though. Of course, you can get some deployment and then you get some monitoring, but typically the prediction write back is not part of AutoML. And even the monitoring is just looking at how often predictions were done as opposed to what was the delivered business impact. Now, some of you already have existing Aible licenses. So how does the Aible Advanced compare? Aible Advanced is a different SKU. You do need to license for it. But many of the capabilities of Aible Advanced are coming to Aible. In fact, most of them already exist in Aible. The data recipe, prediction write back, and monitoring is coming to Aible soon. And there are some usage restrictions. So for example, you see Jonathan show you that we can now have advanced blueprints that can have complex questions that the user can fill out. Well, of course, you can't create advanced blueprints, though you can use it. Data recipes and prediction write back you'll only be able to use. Data enhancement, the business-oriented features will be there, but some of the more advanced features won't be there. Similarly, hyperparameter tuning, the automated way of doing it will be there. Model deployment, the automated way will be there. But some of the more advanced features that we are putting into Aible Advanced won't be there. Hopefully that makes sense. And Jonathan, off to you to show them what Aible Advanced is all about.
All right, thanks, Orjit. Cut over to a demo here. All right, so those of you familiar with Aible, this should look fairly familiar. Here we are on the Aible home screen, and we do have blueprints. And in fact, what I'm going to start with is a blueprint that's actually been shared on our internal marketplace by one of my colleagues. And what we're going to do here is jump in and take a look. Here are the fields that are expected. And what we actually have is this advanced blueprint does already have a data recipe within it. So what I can do here is I can open up my data recipe. And what we can see is this is grabbing from Salesforce opportunities. And I have the ability, if I wanted to, I can go through and customize. I can take a look at the fields that are going to be pulled out of my Salesforce environment here. And these look good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And here it's using my credentials to go ahead and grab that data set. So all of that data from Salesforce is being pulled down now into Aible. And within a second, there we go. I've got my new Salesforce opportunities data set available for me here.
And the data actually went to your AWS S3 bucket using a pre-signed URL. So it doesn't really hit Aible, it hits your AWS account.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that clarification, Orjit. So grabbing the data here, I'm able to load it up and see that, in fact, I am matching the blueprint and what was expected in terms of the fields that were created within this blueprint. I also now have the ability to add interaction terms. So here what I'm going to do for my analysis, I do want to take a look and see the interaction that occurs when somebody happens to have a personal loan and a housing loan. So this is going to create that feature within the data set. But I do also have the ability to ask Aible to go ahead and take a look at some strong interactions and add those in as well. So Aible has done a statistical analysis here and is able to determine which fields would be valuable to go ahead and add as additional interactions. Next step, we're just grabbing the outcome. We want to find the opportunities that do in fact convert. And similar steps to what we've had before, identifying strong predictors so you can remove those if needed. But really where this becomes moving into the advanced flow is when we get into entering our values. So as you remember, those of you familiar with Aible, in the traditional Aible, we're defining the impact, the cost, the value for true positives, false positives, and so forth. But that oftentimes is not how people within the business think. So what we have here is within this advanced blueprint, we've put forward the average cost for a sales visit, the customer revenue, the average cost of goods sold, customer support costs per account, and the number of sales visits that we typically have in closing an opportunity. Now, what this does is this asks the business questions in a very straightforward manner. I'll show you a little bit later how we set this up, but the great thing here is by asking this in the business context, all of the fields are calculated automatically through formulas behind the scenes, so the business user doesn't need to think about what is the value of a true positive or a false positive for a deal that's correctly targeted or incorrectly targeted. All of that is computed off of the values they already know. Next piece here, we're going in and entering our transaction counts. How many opportunities do we win each month? How many do we target and ultimately fail? And then, of course, the opportunities or the leads that we don't convert into opportunities, how many of those, had we processed, would we potentially have ended up converting? And then the final step here, setting our resourcing constraints. So based on our sales capacity, how many opportunities could we actually work each and every month? This is providing Aible the details that it needs to go ahead and optimize and train the model. So I can kick off and run here with my advanced blueprint. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut over to an already completed model. We can check back on this one later as we go through some of the more detailed features. But here we have a completed run within Aible. And we can take a look here, some of the traditional pieces that we've had within Aible, seeing that we have 21 million, almost 22 million additional value being produced over current state. Also providing that sensitivity analysis, again, assisting with model selection here, making sure that even though we have to put in business assumptions, making sure we are selecting the right model to deploy. Now, once we're comfortable that this is the model that we want to go ahead with, we can actually take another step. Now, this model that I have here was pre-run because we're going to show monitoring. And what monitoring does for us is allows us to see how this model has actually been working in production. So I can see here that it is identified that marital status divorce has had a large deviation here over the last few days. And we can take a look at details and compare different education levels, take a look at divorce against the overall average. And what we have the option to do then is go ahead, if we'd like to split out and generate an additional model on top of the current model we have for all the demographics, I can go ahead and click to split out this model. And what it's going to do is it's going to retrain the model for our divorce subgroup. Now, again, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut over to a run where the divorce subgroup has already been split out. And what we can see here is within this subgroup, we have a smaller impact, of course, because it's a smaller population that we have here. But we're able to take a look at the details on an individual basis, also compare that against the overall model that we'd already trained and taken a look at. This subgroup here within divorce, we see that the model targeting and training is a little bit different because, of course, this is specific to this underlying population of individuals who happen to be divorced. Now, I can go ahead and deploy this model to my model set. And once I'm doing that, what this will do is spin up this instance. It will add this model to my existing model. And then, of course, individuals who meet this criteria will be processed appropriately with the scores, with the predictions from this very specific model. So this is allowing us to get into detail, easily branch and split out the models. Once these models are deployed, of course, we have to do something with them. This data is coming from Salesforce, so we're going to go over to our Salesforce account here. And what I have is an opportunity record. And this opportunity record, of course, we have some details about the customers, how we contacted them, and we have this prediction around what the probability of profitability is. Now, what Aible does with its predictions is it's not simply looking at the probability an individual is going to convert. We are actually looking at the probability that it's going to be worth our efforts to actually pursue this individual. Now, I've just learned about this customer that, in fact, I thought this was going to be an upgrade where they were going to be replacing equipment with a better model, but have come to learn recently that this is actually a replacement. So this device is nearing end of life, and they're going to have to be replacing it anyways. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and save this here and give it a second. And there we have an update here where the probability of profitability now, because this is a replacement as opposed to an upgrade, we see that our probability of profitability has actually increased for this account. And that is reflecting what we know to be true in our business, but also giving us a rank ordered list now where I can look at my opportunities and get an idea of which ones are most profitable to pursue so I can take the appropriate business action. Now going back, just to show we're not hiding anything here, the original run that we had set up has actually come back and is providing us results. But what I want to do is actually show you a little bit of detail around how we go in as an advanced user and can set up some of this functionality within these blueprints. So as I'm going through and setting up the advanced blueprints, we do have quite a bit of functionality. We can go in and actually customize which models will be run as opposed to just having them the defaults or the different levels here. And so we have different models that are available to us as advanced users if you don't want to take the off-the-shelf selections. But more importantly here, this is where we go into the advanced setup for these blueprints. And what you're able to do is define variables here. And as you can see, these are the variables with the descriptions that we've set up for this advanced blueprint. But if you want to add more and more variables, you're able to do that once you've added a variable. Then we're still optimizing around the true positives and false positives. But we can set up these formulas that take a look and see for the correctly targeted. Here we are taking a look at the average customer revenue minus the cost of goods sold, minus the average customer support cost, and then netting out the cost per sales visit times the number of sales visits that we have, allowing us to build out a much more complex use case, but also translating that back into the nomenclature that the business user is accustomed to seeing.
And for the people watching an Aible webinar for the first time, of course, we care a lot about what he says, true positive, false positive. The whole idea is, if I know what is the benefit to you when the prediction is correct, and if I know what the cost is to you when the prediction is wrong. In fact, if the prediction is, we say something will happen and it doesn't happen, if we say something won't happen and it happens. Those costs are really important for optimizing to business impact. That's what Jonathan is talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as the advanced user, I can also preview so you can see what the fields are that your business is going to be reviewing. And you're also able to set default values here. So if you kind of know for the business on a global basis, you can populate these fields and then your particular geos or business units can go in and adjust accordingly to the specific needs of their business. Now, the other thing, once I go ahead and I get this populated out, I can also publish to Marketplace. And what we're allowing our advanced users to do, in fact, our enterprise customers, is you can set up your organization where you can share these best practice blueprints. And then other individuals within the organization have the ability to go and grab these best practice blueprints. So you may have a colleague in another region who's trying to establish the same sort of use case that you've developed already. You can publish this out here. You can also go ahead and take a look and see, oh, I was going to dive into fraud prevention, and already one of my colleagues has provided this out here to the marketplace. So I can grab this and go ahead and add that to my blueprint. So now I can go ahead and follow this fraud prevention. And some other pieces as well that we're building out on this is just the ability to share best practice knowledge within the organization, make it so that we can tag to different cost centers, get a feel for who's generating value, tracking who's using what within the organization across the board. And then back here, we can see that my fraud prevention blueprint is now available back here within Aible. This is most of the functionality that I wanted to take you through here within the Aible Advanced. And what we'd love to have you do, anyone interested in taking a look at more of this feature, taking a deep dive into how it would be applied to your business and your use cases, I would love to get you set up with a demo, have that conversation to see how you might use Aible to solve your real world business problems.
Jonathan, if you don't mind, let's go back to the slides, the first 10 circle slide.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I want people to see is the demo went through in what, 20 minutes? This can be, go to the first one, yeah. This can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but we actually went through all of these stages here. When Jonathan first went in and asked the questions about the cost-benefit trade-off, that was requirement gathering. Then he used the marketing blueprint, which is what put the language in terms of missed, whether you actually successfully pursued a customer or not. It asked questions in the language. The data recipe was the part where he specified how you're getting it out of Salesforce. The data enhancement was, for example, the interaction terms he added. It was data cleansing that had happened automatically. The model customization automatically happened, but that is what was causing Aible to be looking for the business impact, that cost benefit trade-off, and it considered the operational constraint. Hyperparameter tuning, of course, happened automatically. Model selection was the part that it gave him a recommendation saying, hey, you should use this model and this will be the expected impact. He also did the sensitivity analysis where you could see what would be the biggest change to an assumption that would be needed for a different model to be the winning model. We didn't go into what if, but you've seen that in previous webinars. And scenario was, in previous webinars, you have seen if we change the resourcing, how we choose a different model automatically. Model deployment was at one click and it was off to the races, deployed automatically to Lambda in the customer's environment. Prediction write back was a write back to Salesforce where we specified where will it be written. And then we were able to go in and see it inside Salesforce and change things and see that the predictions were working automatically. And finally, the monitoring where he showed you how the process was working end to end, and we were able to split models if a subgroup was doing differently. Now, again, remember, 20-minute demo, but in 20 minutes, we went end to end. We have a challenge going on at our website where if you should sign up for it, by the way, it's insane if you don't. In 30 minutes, we'll take your data in AWS and get it to deployed model in your AWS account in 30 minutes. If we can't do it in 30 minutes, you get the model for free. So what do you have to lose? Go sign up for it today. Thank you.